Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us at this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. Today, I've asked my friend Titus Kahoutek to be part of this podcast because of a conversation he and I had. He knows my focus on helping people in midlife in their 40s and 50s, and I was talking to him about nutrition and health and exercise in my life. And the riffs that he gave me and the conversation that he brought to me spun my head so much so that, and I believe in his message so much that he's going to be my next coach. So I want to share him with you in this conversation. Titus has been doing training and human development for the last 17 years or so, and he's the co-founder of Heroics Training Systems in Seattle, Washington, which is a beautiful place. Titus, thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Great.
Very
So
cool.
we were laughing earlier that we both have learning disabilities, dyslexia, A.D.D, and how can I remember my introduction and all, and all that. So this is going to be a freewheeling, fun conversation. So let's go with your opening statements on what men and women in their 40s and 50s need to focus on as far as their health and well-being.
Absolutely. I think, so much of the fitness industry has such an external and aesthetic focus that so much demotivation happens when people say, well, I'm past this point of needing to be quote unquote sexy, or I wish I was like when I was younger sexy. And that idea of the aesthetic motivation is really a good motivator to start with. It initiates the process, but it really breaks down and has no legs or longevity. And so really it's about this self-appreciation practice, or I call it a self-dialogue, where we check in every day through a physical practice, through our physical being, that we sharpen that communication between our body and our mind so that we can move more skillfully in all of the things we do. The benefits are you get to look good. That does happen, but it's only a side benefit once
I'm at 56, so I'm still hanging on to that vanity piece.
Oh, you could hang on all you want. Just don't use it as a motivator. Appreciate it when it shows up for you.
So when me, a 56-year-old man, walks into your gym and says, "I need help," where does your conversation start?
It starts with really the why. What is the story behind that desire? And what we see initiate so much of the process is actually self-loathing. I don't like myself and I want to change something. And with that story being behind the exercise, even though if we never address that story, then I hate myself will never get to I love myself. And so that's where we really start the conversation is, are you coming in because you really are falling in love with yourself and you want to expand that understanding of who you are? Or are you trying to run from something you are? And we try to stop the conversation there and pivot towards, can you do this about self-appreciation, self-love, so that every rep you do is a demonstration of that, instead of every rep you do being a demonstration of how much you don't like yourself. And
so I walk in and you say this to me and I go, huh? I just want a six-pack.
Yeah.
And I really actually don't even know what you're talking about.
I might give a little laugh and an understanding and really see how that pursuit, I get it. I understand. And I want you to have even more than that. Right? So if we want to talk about looking good, I would love for you to look better than you've ever looked in your life and care less than you've ever cared in your life, because you've learned something more valuable than that through the process of self-discovery. And in that process, you start to let your actual beauty be what it actually is.
This is water to my soul, but let's make that real for people.
Yeah.
So someone comes into your gym and they're bought in. Like, you have this conversation as you're showing them around, and they're bought in and they start. What is the process that you find your people go through?
So the very first thing we do is an assessment. We take in the person, who this person has been in their life, their training history, their work history, their goals, what's been motivating them, and we do a full postural assessment. So we look at how a person stands just in a relaxed posture, vertical standing posture, where their head is in position, the shoulders are in position, the hips are, how they're relating to the ground. We do a 15-point length tension relationship assessment. So if you have one tight hamstring on your right side and a loose hamstring on the left side, how does that play out in the pelvis, the spine, the shoulders, and the neck? So we do a very objective kind of body assessment, a breathing assessment. Do you use an inverse breathing pattern? And I could fill that in a little bit later. Or a proper breathing pattern, and how that sets up the structures for stability of the spine, low back, and pelvis.
So I'm actually going to move you up to the 50,000 foot level, because I love this stuff. But what I'm really interested in now is, so now you're assessing all these things, and I know you're doing that because you're assessing, you want to help them get to the goals that they want, but you want to do it injury free.
Yes.
Right, because that's how you and I met. You saw me doing push-ups on video, and from the video you said you're gonna hurt yourself.
Yes, exactly.
So you do all this so that you can provide a program. When we started talking, you said when you're addressing health issues, when you're addressing the mind-body issues, we could go in like every different direction, and this could be a series of itself for the next year or two.
Yes.
So tell me all the points. So again, focusing on people who are in their 40s and 50s, and like when I was talking to Monica Day about sex, she says sex is very different in your 40s and in your 50s. So we're talking about two different things. Go in that direction with.
Absolutely. I would say that so much injury has been done in the process of overtraining, trying to achieve the perfect body. And when we were younger, let's say in our 20s and 30s, or even before that, we didn't care about the patterns and the habitual habits that our body's in, and we could accumulate all of this. Well, in the 40s and 50s, all of these patterns have built up into chronic injuries: knee pain, back pain, hip pain, shoulder pain. And ignorance of how those injuries developed reinforces the injury and then demotivates somebody to move, right? Oh, I'm getting old, is what they'll say.
So my Achilles tendon went out, and I had to have it reattached this past year.
Mm-hmm.
What I found out through physical therapy was it was because I had surgery on my toe after running marathons, and my toe was weak, and that by strengthening my toe, if I don't strengthen my toe, I'm going to re-injure my Achilles tendon. So the holistic approach, if you're looking for a trainer, if you're looking for someone who's going to help you, you need someone who understands that this wear and tear over the years has trained your body to be injury prone, not injury proof.
Injury resistant, exactly, and anti-fragile training. When we look at, again, the habits of fitness over the last, let's say, 50 years, the easiest thing to do is just go out and run. Everybody should go out and run. We see more injuries in runners and cyclists, people that do high volume, repetitive practices without the maintenance work and the recovery work and the understanding of what's happening in the nervous system and the tissues. They develop injuries over time. And so when we look at the body, how do we build an anti-fragile system? That's the whole point. And that's restoring postural balance, improving movement patterns, the very basic primal movement patterns, and we'll get into those. And then improving complexity of understanding around the joint. And that's what each individual can be doing when they're doing an exercise. What we've been doing is sets and reps. Does that sound familiar? Sets and reps.
Totally, sets and reps.
Right? And so with that mindset, the person goes into the practice of the exercise just doing sets and reps, not looking at the quality of the dimensions around the joints within that rep. Okay, and I'm going to say that just slower, that if you really focus on how the shoulder, elbow, and wrist are in relationship while you're doing a push-up, and then each push-up you're studying that relationship over time and strengthening that relationship so that the movement is done with less effort and more skill, you're getting stronger with preventing injury for the future. You're actually programming good patterns into that joint forever.
So I'm now thinking about, I'm setting myself up for my 60s and 70s and 80s with what you're talking about.
Exactly, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. Right, so we're playing the real long game.
Great. So if someone isn't fortunate enough to have you as their coach, and we're going to talk at the end of this of how people could actually, in an affordable way, have you part of their lives. But so how does the average person talk to their trainer, or if they're doing in their home gym, how do they figure this out for themselves?
Yeah, if I could release one concept into the atmosphere that would be really useful, it's to have a physical practice that integrates your understanding of the body as opposed to teaches you to tolerate pain. Okay, and
So instead of no pain, no gain, give me the alternative.
exactly the opposite. So instead of no pain, no gain, it's a process of self-discovery, so that every single rep is of that practice. And how do I put it is it shouldn't hurt at all. Here's a good one. The least amount of effort to do it beautifully well. And you're always practicing the least amount of effort to do it beautifully well.
So walk me through a push-up.
So the least amount of effort in a push-up, get yourself in a push-up position. Hold just a plank with doing nothing. See how much you can relax just in that posture while holding a plank. How many muscles can you turn off and still hold that plank? Okay, and that would be one practice. Then as you're doing the push-up itself.
So I'm going to slow you down. So this is all about consciousness. It's not about getting your reps in. It's about understanding your body. It's almost like strength training yoga.
It's mindfulness practice. It is yoga. And yoga, Mark should have his own yoga. Mark doesn't go to a yoga class. Mark practices yoga. And that's Mark's relationship to his body on the deepest level, forever and ever, deeper levels. And you get that understanding through movement patterns.
Got it.
And when you practice those movement patterns again and again, you sharpen the nervous system and you maintain your longevity over time.
Got it. Okay, so we got the push up. Now give me another exercise where you would have someone would do in their basement.
Yeah, I'll give you 7, and maybe this is something everybody can write down, because these are the 7 primal movement patterns that if you just practice these 7 patterns alone, you will be a healthy, fit person for the rest of your life.
So everybody get a pen and a piece of paper, and this will also be subtitled and be in those show notes.
Yes, this is key. You have 7 primal movement patterns. You have a press, and that's anytime your arms are moving away from the body in any direction. That's down, up, out, so a press. You have a pull, anytime your hands are moving towards the body, down, up, out. You have a bend, that's a bending at the waist. You have a twist, a rotation of the trunk. You have a squat, which is both legs bending in unison. You have a lunge, which is the split stance, lunge, and then you have a gait, and that's your walking pattern. And a walk is one of the most beautiful orchestrations of the nervous system possible. And you can get a lot of health and vitality just in the practice of a really well-balanced, full gait walking pattern.
Wow, I've had to relearn walking since my Achilles tendon to walk properly and consciously.
Yes, so you understand.
So those 7 movements I will absolutely write down and put in the show notes for everybody. Mm-hmm. That's brilliant.
And those are super basic. They're super simple. Don't overthink it. Complexity doesn't come from making the exercise more complex, like standing on a Basu ball with a rubber band and trying to do 1-arm push-up. The complexity comes from you bringing your mind into the relationships of the movement and really developing a complex understanding within your own body.
Wow. So now I love that. Give me some don'ts.
Don'ts.
Yeah.
Don't check out. One of the most damaging practices of the fitness world is separating the mind and body. So really high volume or high exertion activities that force you into a pain tolerance cycle, that tends to check the body out. So people listen to music, or they watch TV, or they try to separate themselves from the experience of exercise, which is actually causing
guilty as charged. I have a show going for every workout.
Right, and you're not alone in that. That's the general practice, because the fitness industry has been practicing separation of the body-mind instead of integration of the body-mind. Yoga is the practice of integration of the body-mind. You can practice yoga with weights, you can practice yoga with heavy exertion, but if you're doing from an internal state of understanding, you're in yoga. And you're going to build real strength, actual translatable strength, versus build up injuries and separation from the body and the mind.
Wow. All right, give me another don't.
Another don't is don't bullshit yourself and think that you can just exercise food off. You know, like nutrition and what we actually take into our body gives us more form. It informs us more than anything else we do. And so it's not that you can just have sin over here and be good over here. It's you're looking at an ontological relationship of your whole self to kind of put together all the practices that support your vitality: nutrition, rest, movement, relationship.
So cool. Let's move to rest. So we're
Mm-hmm.
exercising. Tell me how rest plays into not only all times in life, but in midlife.
In midlife, well, you know, rest is a really interesting thing because uh, there's no end to a movement practice. So you have a really hard workout on one day. The next day, rest doesn't mean disengagement. It means doing lighter movements, stretches, breathing, um, recovering the tissues, doing some myofascial release with some foam rolls or some balls. There's all types of myofascial releasing tools. We can do a lot of learning in our recovery time. So if you had a really hard workout, even that night, you can be doing wrist stretches, wrist work, and these are all resting mechanisms. Um, Obviously, there's all types of recovery practices like cryotherapy or cold showers or
So I've done cryotherapy. Tell me why cold showers are a good idea.
They stimulate growth stimulate a lot of growth hormone, and they also flush the system. So if you do some cold shower and then hot shower, then cold shower, that kind of pumping system improves circulation.
Is that
It also,
before or after your workout?
after the workout. And you could also do it in the morning. These are things you could just do outside of your workout that are all part of practicing, building the body mind. And when we look at the body, you have a body mind. We don't look at a body and a mind. It's one unit. And you build your mind through your movements, and you build your body through what you take in. So what you're reading, what types of shows you watch, what you're eating, all of that is what we're building our body with. And then our movements, our practices are shaping our mind and what's possible for us. How do we move in this way? How do we build relationships with loads on our body, with stress in our body?
I really suggest that everybody listen to this twice, because this is really fascinating stuff that you're not going to hear anyplace else. I have to go towards CrossFit.
Yes.
So people my age are flocking to CrossFit as if it's the church.
Yep.
And I see the allure. I love the idea of feeling vibrant and youthful again and really competing and getting those juices going. And then over and over again, people are knocked out of CrossFit from injuries. So I don't mean to demonize it, but talk to me about the cautions there.
I think it's a lot of what we talked about is that it's again, feeding into the addiction to exertion as opposed to building up the practice of connection. And they're really diametrically opposed. CrossFit's awesome for really pushing to the max of physical capacities. You might even reach a level of peak performance. What I know is that levels of peak performance are not sustainable. And especially if they're done in a competitive way, which isn't about you, but it's about the environment you're in, eventually the people blame themselves for their body breaking down, and then they check out, and then they're out of fitness for the next 20 years. So there's a cost there. I think the sport of CrossFit's great for a young person. You know, if you really want to check it out, go for it. I don't suggest it because I don't find the value in it over the long term. But I do love physical capacity and gains. You know, they're great. I like them done in a mindful way that's sustainable. So I'm not going to say you shouldn't go to CrossFit. I'm saying that when you get injured from CrossFit, start looking for a more mature way to work with the body.
Beautiful. So and that's where we'll catch people. That's one of the reasons why I love coaching people in midlife, is because what was working before stopped working. So now people are open to find a new way. So if your exercise is working, you're going to check out during our conversation. But if your exercise is not working, if you're not able to, like for me, I'm doing push-ups and then all of a sudden my shoulder hurts and I'm like, wah, I'm done with exercise.
I have to caveat this is I was a competitive soccer player. I played collegiate soccer. I played soccer for 25 years. I was one of the more competitive people I know. And I wasn't just competitive. I like to beat people, right? It wasn't just to win. I like to crush and beat people. And I really bought into the competitive mindset in all facets. What I saw eventually is that every person who's addicted to competition is a loser. And what I mean by that is you eventually lose. You eventually come to the end of that competitive
Hmm.
time period, and then there's a crisis that comes in with our identity of who am I without my competitive self, and it starts to deplete who we become as an adult. And so what I'd really like to invite is a paradigm shift where, like, competition, driving progress with competition and destruction is great. It does go pretty far. But what I'm really interested now is how do you drive progress through collaboration and creation? And our body is an amazing collaborative platform of relationship building. How our body relates to itself in movement is a collaborative effort that we can build through practice.
I'm kind of speechless with that. Did you have an epiphany there for all your years of competitiveness when that didn't work? Is that how you found this shift?
Yes, absolutely. I hit the end of my line, right? As I pushed it all the way, and then I quit. I was done with my sport. And then who am I? My identity was shifting. My values were shifting. My value of who I am was shifting. I stopped working out. I lost a ton of weight. I became weak. And why was I driving? Now I love the concept of the infinite game versus the finite game. So my sport shifted, and the criteria of the sport shifted. It's much more long. It's forever. It's how do I show up at the best, in the best way forever, not just for the game or the competition or this event, but literally forever.
Wow. So Titus, leave us with some final thoughts on. Will you come back? Actually, will you stay and we'll do a part 2 on nutrition and food? Do you have
I would
time to
love
do?
that. Yeah, definitely.
Great. So give me some final
Definitely.
thoughts on the physical.
Final thoughts is really if I can invite people into an integrative relationship to themselves and their body. One is in the language. If we say I have to take care of my body, if we can shift that to I am committed to my physical practice. Because when I take care of my body, even saying that in those words separates us. We take care of it like a car or like a couch or like a house, and it becomes a chore. If it's your physical being in the world and you need to engage your physical practice, it really carries much more weight and meaning. So it's just a little shift. I know it's not so tangible like do 10 push-ups, but if you can think of your physical practice as a full practice of physicality as opposed to just taking care of your body, your practice will take exponential leaps. Exponential leaps. And
Wow.
that's a high level thing to say, but and I hope it lands right, is that concept of separation makes all physical practices kind of null and void.
As I said to everybody, you need to listen to this twice. Where can people find you, Titus?
You could find me at heroicstrainingsystems.com, www.heroicstrainingsystems.com, and my email address is titus@heroicstrainingsystems.com.
And that will be in the show notes. So just quickly, how can people work from around the world and around the country work with you virtually?
Yeah, we have a number of ways to engage with us. We have an online training program that is just getting off the ground, so you guys will be early in. And that's going to be, you're going to have your own personal coach, you're going to have individualized program design, and follow-ups with your coach over time. I do coaching as well, if you could imagine executive coaching and personal training mashed together, because how we show up in one domain is how we show up in all domains. And so how we show up to our physical practice is how we show up to the boardroom. And that's a lot of what I work with my executives and entrepreneurs on. So that's another way that I work with people.
So thank you, Titus. And I want to thank you for being part of this. We'll talk to you in part 2. I want to thank everybody else for listening to the Mastering Midlife podcast. If you liked what you heard, please share this with anybody you think of on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and wherever else you think of it. If you have any subject matter that you'd like me to cover, anybody you'd like me to interview, please message me, and I'm happy to do that. And I love you. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you on part 2.
Thank you so much.